Hello, I am Sadie Miller and I play Sarah Jane Smith for Big Finish. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Larry, it's Fraser. And you use, they all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do?
They all say, who is Doctor Who? Where is he from? What does he do? They wonder who is Doctor Who? So I ask you, who's Doctor Who?
Welcome back to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the podcast that explores the colorful world of Doctor Who collecting, the collectors, all kinds of Doctor Who merchandise, and sometimes just plain Doctor Who. Great place to talk about it. Brought to you in part by Bags Unlimited Incorporated and Forbidden Planet. I am Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting Doctor Who now for 44 years. Long time. Welcome to our 75th episode. We're very proud to get to this milestone. And a little bit about me. I actually opened one of the first Doctor Who shops in Chicago that exclusively served Doctor Who fans. This was back in 1984, and I was only 15 years old. We called the store Bundles from Britain, and I never thought it was the best idea. In fact, I thought it was a kind of a silly idea. But many years later, fast forward, I picked up a little book called Red, White, and Who, the story of Doctor Who in America. And Bundles from Britain lives on page 384. So we went from a silly idea to making Doctor Who history. So it's very humbling. You should have a copy of this book. This book answers a lot of questions about what happened here in the United States. And you can find a link to buy this book on the front page of our website at DoctorWhoCollectors.com. We don't make any money on this book. We want everyone to have a copy. We are part of the Direction Point Doctor Who Podcast Network, and you can find some great podcasts if you visit the website at directionpoint.org. And if you are a Doctor Who podcaster, join today. There is no cost. All you got to do is create some commercials, and that's really easy to do. So you can join the ranks of wonderful podcasts such as Time Streams, Police Box in a Junkyard, the Doctor Who Target Book Club, Traveling the Vortex, the Doctor's Beard podcast, Doctor Who Literature, many, many more. For more information, again, that website, directionpoint.org. And speaking of links, of course, I always include in every episode 2 wonderful resources for collectors, including timelash.com, and under that heading, you want to go to the TARDIS Library. That's a great place to not only look up Doctor Who media, but you can create a free account and keep track of what you have and what your want lists are. And even he has links to eBay auctions and Amazon sites all over the world. And that site is free. So thank you, Mr. Dan O'Malley, for providing that wonderful resource to us collectors. If you need something that's not fits in that category, but you want to find out, where the Doctor Who coffin existed. Yes, it did. We did a podcast on it. Then you need Howe's Transcendental Toy Box. And I'm talking about my good friend David J. Howe. And you can find that at doctorwhotoybox.co.uk. And I was told by my UK friends that it's .co.uk, but I thought I'd make it easier for everybody if I just spelled it out. He's a great friend of mine, a great resource for collectors as well. If you're looking to buy Doctor Who items and you want to find something at a great price, look no further than DoctorWhoStore.com. It's in the name. That's Alien Entertainment. They have what you need. They definitely will serve you. The owner and I have known each other for more than almost 40 years. He was my partner at Bundles from Britain back in the day, and that's Jean Smith, of course. And if you don't know who Jean Smith is, then you probably need that book, Red, White, and Who, the story of Doctor Who in America. He and I created that whole foundation for what is now a great convention, a wonderful company, and a great way to get Doctor Who items. So if you live in the Chicago area, you can actually select free pickup from the Lombard store. Wonderful stuff. Also, if you do visit there, they've got lots of other things too. They have a large Doctor Who selection, but also Harry Potter and Star Trek and other science fiction items as well. So if you need store hours or locations, because they also have one in Logan Square, visit alienentertainment.com for location and store hours. You can also find great Doctor Who items at Forbidden Planet, but you don't need to go anywhere. Just go to our website at DoctorWhoCollectors.com, select Doctor Who merchandise links, and I've got the links to items that are for sale from Forbidden Planet. You can just buy it through us. We get a little portion of that to help pays for our bills here. And don't forget our own eBay store. We've got a link to our eBay store. We've got lots of Target books, hardcover books, and other Doctor Who items, and even some non-Doctor Who items. All sales for the podcast, or help the podcast. Oh, let's not forget our good friends at Who North America, Keith and Jenny, amazing people. They've been open for quite some time, and you can find them at whona.com. And, of course, our friends at the Who Shop in London. You can find them at thewhoshop.com. That's altogether thewhoshop.com. On our website, of course, in addition to all of our podcasts posted on our website, we have the complete guide to Doctor Who classic hardcover books. More information is coming in almost weekly on that, so you might want to check that out if you want to know how they look in publication order. I do not have full page artwork for those books. I do not have permission to do that, so and that's very important to know, but you can Google search those and find other sites for that. All right, what's happening? What's going on here? Doctoberfest 2024 is set for this October. It is still in preparation, so I have no announcements to make on that yet, except that I am a guest. I will let you know more about that as we get by. Our celebrity guest is to be announced, so as soon as that is announced, I will make that as public as I can. Chicago TARDIS 2024 is now set for next Thanksgiving weekend in November. Join us for the 25th anniversary of this convention. For more information, go to chicagotardis.com. Now, the first guest has been announced. It will be Annette Badland. And if you don't know who that is, first of all, you might remember her as the pub owner in the series Ted Lasso. But she also played a Slitheen, I couldn't almost say that one, Slitheen during the Eccleston year. And so you don't want to miss that. More guests will be announced very soon. So make sure you get to that website, chicagotardis.com. What's next in my travels here? My next stop, of course, if you're going to be at Game Storm in Oregon, my 60 Items for 60 Years movie will be shown there. And my final live presentation of the 60 items, actually I'm going to make it 61 items for 61 years. I've got an additional item to add to that. Live will be at Consinity 24 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That'll be the final stop for that. I'm also a guest speaker at this wonderful convention. I will have a table there too with some goodies for sale. So stop by the convention at the Milwaukee School of Engineering University, and we'll see you there. What's new to the collection? Well, it wasn't a very busy month, but some things kept floating in. First, I was really surprised the other day when I went to my mailbox at my day job, and there was a Doctor Who coloring book in the box, and one of my dear colleagues had found it in a thrift store and gave it to me because she saw all the Doctor Who stuff on my car. I have 2 license plate frames, one on each side, and of course the police box decal in the back window. So yeah, it's really kind of cool. I also have a copy of The Companions of Doctor Who, which is edited by Ken Deep and David Bushman, a collection of stories. Ken Deep will be my guest on the next episode of this podcast, talking about that and many more. I got issue 600 of Doctor Who magazine, so thanks to the Who Shop for that. That means I have the first Doctor Who weekly from 1979 and the current 600 issues. That's 600 magazines. Wow. And finally, I got a very nice copy. It was on Instagram, so no surprise there, of the Radio Times from January 73 featuring the 3 doctors on the cover. Not a very easy issue to find. I'm actually replacing a copy that I have that was in really bad shape, and that copy is in our eBay store, and we're hoping that it'll go to a good home. More on the way, but that's all for now. Of course, you want to see any of my collection up close, and it's tentative right now. We're not sure if this is going to be the case. If we end up doing a hotel for Doctoberfest, we will have the collecting museum, and that will be where my collection will be housed. Or I don't bring the entire thing, but I bring a good portion of it, and that'll be at Doctoberfest in Indianapolis this October. lot of rumors floating around about there. I'll go on more about this when I get to my time, but second and third printing hardcover books by Wingate or W.H. Allen or Longbow. I'm always on the lookout for concrete proof of these existence, as we cannot seem to find any official list from W.H. Allen, because they're gone. And the Target book by David J. Howe doesn't do it does a great job, but it doesn't have a lot of information. And then there were other books that came out, including I have the Doctor Who, unofficial Doctor Who book guide by Chris Stone, and of course Paul Smith's, based on a television series. And recently, and I shouldn't even mention it, but another book came out called The Target Manual, The Collector's Reference Guide, Volume 1 hardcover books. This book was an unlicensed book that was put up for sale, cost almost $60, and includes full color artwork of all the books, but it does not have any permission from the artists to do that. So many of the artists are aware of it and are working hard to get that book removed. So I would say do not buy that book. Anyway, recently I had an eBay seller tell me that I recently saw a third printing of Genesis of the Daleks. I said, did you happen to take a picture of that book or anything to prove it? And they said no. So we're gonna say probably not true. We've debunked that. Several of the experts out there that I consult, who've been avid, including a person who has all the hardcovers, tells me that that's just not true. But if you have a book that does, seem to suggest that there is a third printing of something, other than the fact that we are now convinced that the third printing of Loch Ness Monster is probably the second printing, since there's no evidence and no one has cited a second printing of that book. So that could be what happened there. Anyway, contact me if you have anything different. And of course, I love talking to collectors. My motto here is let's talk about your collection. And I don't mean that in an intervention way. I mean, let's get it out there. So share your story here. Contact me at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com to set up that interview. On today's show, I'm going to be talking about reproduction boxes of various Doctor Who items from the past and how they are confusing collectors. And I've got at least one response from one of the companies that actually makes it very clear how their products are different from the originals. Another company that has not returned my message, and other people have kind of indicated that they do not indicate on their boxes. And we think that, we'll go more into that later, but it'll be really quite, I just want to make sure that people are not getting fooled, because I did get fooled, and I'll tell that story a little later. Also today on this story, we'll be presenting more of the lost stories of Jean Airey. Jean Airey is best known, of course, for The Doctor and the Enterprise. So if you need to know more about that, you can see episode 38 of this podcast. It's a double podcast. We combine with the Target Book Club. It reviews the story, and then we talk about the book. And of course, various fanzines that were published in and around the Midwest have these wonderful stories. And of course, we lost Jean Airey back in 2016. She passed away. But today I've got Brandon Peters, host of the Brandon Peters podcast. He also interviewed me at Doctoberfest. He'll be reading a story called Never Underestimate a Human by Jean Airey. I want to thank our patrons, of course. If you want to see exclusive video content, including some of our video interviews, everybody asks, where can I see that interview with Peter Purvis? Well, you can see it on Patreon. Subscribe at the $15 level or above, and you can get access to all the behind-the-scenes stuff, including some private tours of my collection. We'll talk more about that, on Patreon. So patreon.com/Doctor Who Collectors Podcast altogether. You can also support us at Podbean. We are a Podbean podcast. You can go there and give $1, give $10, give $100, whatever you feel comfortable supporting our podcast with. Our theme song, of course, is Who's Doctor Who by Barry Mason and Les Reed, performed by Fraser Hines. You can get this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and Podbean. We are working to get on SiriusXM. Not an easy feat. So you can also get us at directionpoint.org. All right, time for my time. This is my time. It's a chance for me to talk about anything I want to talk about. It's my show. Anyway, first of all, I want to talk about rumors for just a second, and not the Fleetwood Mac album. When I get a seller, and I mentioned this just a little bit ago, but when I get a seller, it tells me, well, yeah, I've seen this. I've seen a third printing of Genesis the Daleks. I've seen a fourth printing of this in hardcover. I'm pretty sure there's a second printing of Brain of Morbius out there somewhere. Well, that's great. However, you telling me this makes no it has no credibility, as far as that goes. Because what I'll do is, of course, I'll go to the Braxiatel collection on Facebook or the Collectors Club, and I'll say, hey, has anybody seen da-da-da-da? And usually I get a bunch of answers saying, no, it doesn't exist. I've got all of them, and I was there when they came out, and no, they didn't happen. So let's, if you're trying to win my business or impress me, and I'm easily impressed, there are things out there that I've never seen before in other collections that, it doesn't make me envious. It just makes me very proud that people are doing this and keeping things alive. And then maybe one day there might be a full collection of everything Doctor Who related in maybe different places, but at least preserved somewhere. But if you're going to tell me something about, I might have seen this, or I did see that, but I got rid of it, or I had one and I sold it, and I never took a photo of it. Well, let me take you back to the Lost Episodes, where a gentleman claimed to have part 4 of The 10th Planet on VHS, and actually collected a reward, I think, if I remember right, and then sent in a blank tape. So, I mean, yeah, it's sad, and it's kind of like the price gougers out there, people that are, expecting big bucks for their Doctor Who items and knowing that they're not worth what they're, it's not worth half of what they're asking for. So, I've encountered a few of these on eBay, and eBay can be good or bad depending on where you go, what's being sold and who you're dealing with. But there's a guy out there who's selling a stack of Target books, paperbacks. I went through all the titles, and there's not a single title there that is considered rare or hard to find or anything like that. They're all very pedestrian, what I call Target books. Second, third, fourth, fifth, the printings of things. And he was asking $600 for the whole lot. And I said, at the very best, it's worth about $200. It's worth roughly a little, $2 a book or something like that. So I put that in. He's like, no, I won't take anything less than $500. I said, you're going to be waiting a long time to get that money. It's never going to happen. I see that a lot with lots, a lot of 10 magazines for $300. I'm like, they're not worth $300. And if somebody, of course, gives them $300, and that gives credit to that, and then other people come out and say, oh, I can make a lot of money on this. Every once in a while, I see something for a great price, and sometimes I'll grab it for a great price. It's all about being persistent and being out there. I did finally manage to pick up a TARDIS tuner for a little under $100. However, no box. And I think the big value there is in the box. So if I can find a box, that would make that even better. But I wasn't going to pay $1,250 for one in a box. It's new. It works. Somebody held on to it for all these years. It came out in '78. And I haven't seen any of them for under $1,000. So it's it may very well be that way. I'm not calling that an outrageous offer. I'm just calling it just a little bit high. But that's if it's getting that, obviously it's not, because they're still out there. But anyway, that's that whole thing about gouging prices. And of course, that goes with rumors. The rumor about the fire at the warehouse, or the wheel in space, is very hard to find. And turns out there was no fire. And they printed like thousands of copies of Wheel in Space. But I still see it out there for $68. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Or Meglos from the Blue Spine collection going for $80. I'm like, no, it doesn't go for $80. Maybe $40. Maybe $40, but not $80. Of course, this is just my opinion based on what I've seen, based on what I've done. I was an actual Doctor Who dealer. When we sold hardcover books, we sold them for $12, because that was the price. I know they've gone up a little bit, but you can still find some reasonable stuff. I'm going to be appearing on the Doctor Who Target Book Club when they do the reading of the Twin Dilemma, and I wanted to find a beat-up copy of Twin Dilemma that I could read, and I found a hardcover for $20. It's a ex-library, but I don't care. It's a large print, easy to read, that kind of thing. So that's it's all about the search, and I've talked about that before. When you do the search, you've got to find what you're looking for, keep your stay in your lane, stuff like that, and branch out when you're ready, and of course always keep a budget. It's stuff like that. But that's the way it is. Unfortunately, while Doctor Who is a very popular show in its 61st year, it's going to attract people out there who think they can just cash in on Doctor Who fans. And don't be a Doctor Who fan that gives up their hard-earned money to somebody who has no interest in the show, by the way. They're only interested in money. So that's why I promote people like Gene Smith and Keith and Jenny and the Who Shop, of course, because they've been in business before the new Doctor Who came out in 2005. We started in 84 back with bundles, and a lot of these guys were through the drought years in the 90s when there was nothing but a Doctor Who movie and Big Finish in the late 90s. So those are the people that are in it for the fandom and for the fans, not for the cash. And that is my time. Thank you so much for listening. Coming up after the break, of course, we'll have our main story about reproduction boxes and, of course, the most outrageous offer. Stay tuned.
Traveling the Vortex.
Are you ready to embark on an epic journey through time and space? Join the thousands of Whovians around the world who've discovered Traveling the Vortex, the ultimate Doctor Who podcast for die-hard fans and curious newcomers alike.
Every week, we dive deep into the Whoniverse, discussing the episodes, theories, and hidden gems. We dissect the Doctor's adventures, share behind-the-scenes stories, and explore the legacy of this iconic show.
Traveling the Vortex brings fans together, fostering a global community of Whovians. Whether you're a fan of classic or new Who, there's something for everyone.
Join us on this incredible journey as we unravel the mysteries of time and space.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to Traveling the Vortex today on your favorite podcast platform.
Traveling the Vortex. Your ticket to adventure awaits.
Traveling the Vortex is a proud member of the Direction Point Podcast Network. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hi, I'm Juliet.
And I'm Nathan.
Experience Doctor Who from the very beginning through a classic fan's eyes.
And through the eyes of a new Who fan.
Reminisce and relive those classic moments with Nathan as he offers fun insight.
Or experience them for the first time with Juliet as she dwells on social issues, history, fashion, and the size of a flashlight.
We're the Time Streams Podcast.
Find us on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Welcome to our next segment. Today we present another lost story by the late writer Jean Airey, who penned quite a few fan fiction stories from Star Trek, Doctor Who, and actually combining the two with a famous story called The Doctor and the Enterprise. So we are showcasing some of her writings, her poems. Some of them will be Doctor Who. We're doing those first, and then we'll find some of the other ones she did and share those here. And we have a guest reader today. So I welcome to the podcast Mr. Brandon Peters, the host of The Brandon Peters Show. And you might remember he interviewed me for his podcast at Doctoberfest. So today we present the story by Jean Airey called Never Underestimate a Human.
Never Underestimate a Human by Jean Airey. Read by Brandon Peters. In a room on Gallifrey, Leela was working very hard. Not at skinning an animal, but at a very sophisticated computer terminal. Her appearance easily matched the gleam and polish of the shiny black box. Her hair was piled in polished curls on top of her head, and the one-piece jumpsuit she was wearing showed off her lithe body to perfection. She was somewhat annoyed when the buzzer requesting entry into the communication room sounded. K9, see who that is. Affirmative, mistress. K9 rolled away to look through the door's sensing device. A somewhat garbled voice came through the door's speaker. Leela didn't bother listening. K9 could understand the outmoded circuit much better than she could, and she had never been one to waste her energies. It is a time lady, mistress. A time lady? What does she want? She requests a conversation with you, mistress. Leela was very annoyed. Her work had been going very well, and she did not like being interrupted. Now? Affirmative, mistress. Sensing her annoyance, he added wistfully, If you do not wish to be bothered, mistress, I can stun her. She was tempted. It had, after all, been a long time. She smiled. K9? Catching herself in time. There were, after all, very few irresistible impulses you could give in to if you wanted to survive on Gallifrey. No, don't stun her. She turned the terminal off. Tell her to come in. A young woman entered the room. Her hair was a dark ebony and arranged in a very simplistic style, making her seem even younger than she could possibly be. She had an aura of embedded innocence that compounded the youthful appearance. Leela would have assumed that she was only about 15 if she had not known that there were no time ladies of that age, time ladies only becoming such on reaching their 75th birthday. Greetings. I am Romana Varatnalunda. You are the barbarian woman who is married to Andred? Leela knew that her mouth was agape. She'd met some prejudiced Time Lords and ladies before, but never one who was this blunt. She felt herself reaching for the knife she no longer carried. Some habits do die hard, but stopped. There were, she had learned, better ways to deal with some types of situations. I am Leela. The doctor would have recognized the smile with which a warrior of the Serva team greeted an enemy under truce, and would have started worrying about Yanis Thorns. Of course, the doctor had not seen Leela for some time. You once traveled with a Time Lord known as the Doctor? The question was phrased as though Leela was an idiot child, although the tone was friendly. That is, as friendly as this particular time lady could be to a human. Yes, Leela had been well taught not to volunteer information. I need some information from you. The lady stopped to check a small electronic memory system that she was carrying. Seeming to realize that the pause might seem embarrassing to her listener, she added, as though she were talking to a child, Are you willing to help me? Leela decided to play along with the game. I can try. If it's too difficult, I can ask K9 to help me. The time lady looked up from her notations. K9? He greeted you at the door. Oh, that silly-looking machine, the time lady laughed. K9 is not a silly-looking machine. Leela realized that even without weapons, she could dispose of this pompous person as she obviously deserved. The time lady seemed unaware of her imminent danger, and Leela relented. He is. He? My dear, you should never anthropomorphize machinery. In spite of her apparent insensitivity, the time lady had a sense of self-preservation. But I'm sure that it's very sophisticated. He is. Leela was willing to give the time lady enough rope to hang herself. What do you want? The lady was quite honestly puzzled. Have I annoyed you? I did not mean to. But I'm not used to dealing with barbarian emotions. Now, if you can control yourself, I'm sure that we can have a very worthwhile discussion. I don't see what there is we could discuss. Well, the doctor, of course. The doctor? There was quite a lot that Leela could tell about the doctor, but not to this person. Yes, the lady smiled. She wasn't what she considered vain, but there were surely something that would impress even some people. I've been given a mission by the Lord President. I am to assist the doctor in a matter of great importance. You are going to help the doctor. Why would the Lord President select you? My dear Leela, she said through clenched teeth. Of course, Leia. I should think that it would be obvious. She paused, noting that the barbarian did not seem to think that it was at all obvious. I mean, my educational background and training? That didn't seem to help, so she went on. Surely, on such an important mission, the doctor requires the very best in his assistant. Do you really believe that? My dear Lufa, the doctor's a very brilliant person, or so I've been told. While I'm sure he might find it amusing to travel for a time with such a simplistic creature such as you, this mission is of such importance that its success must be safeguarded by providing him with every possible aid. Leela's eyebrows raised and her sense of humor returned. Then why have you come to talk to me? You seem to have all the answers. It occurred to me that you might have some small bits of information that would assist me in my dealings with him. Misinterpreting the expression on Leela's face as an expression of puzzlement, she added, to enable our mission to succeed more quickly. Have you ever been away from Gallifrey before? Of course, the lady said indignantly. I made several observational field trips when I was in school. Observational? Then you didn't actually do anything? The lady shook her head, honestly puzzled by the thought that someone would think that she should have. Leela sighed. Perhaps it would only be good manners to try to convince this foolish child that she was really not equipped for what she was going to be facing. Are you skilled in the methods of self-defense? The lady laughed. Oh, my dear Larga. Now isn't that just typical of a barbarian? How very silly. Don't you know that if you don't bother the natives, they won't bother you? This is an important mission, but it's hardly dangerous. Do you really believe that? Leela was fast losing her scarcely regained patience again. Certainly. The lady was not insensitive enough to miss the amazement on Leela's face. Oh, I'm sure that some of these stories that are being told about the doctor have been wildly exaggerated. That's why I came to visit you, Leela. Leela. The lady looked at Leela, wondering what she was doing that seemed to be irritating the barbarian. Perhaps if she re-emphasized the fact that Leela could be quite helpful. Even though your outlook is quite simplistic, you should be able to tell me what I need to know. About the doctor? Yes, of course. If you can't remember, Leela smiled. It was not a nice smile, but the lady did not seem to know the difference. Once, a long time ago, her father had taken her fishing. I think that I can remember what you need to know. Actually, K9 can summarize the doctor best for you. The machine? The lady was frankly amazed. Oh, yes, it's quite infallible. She called, K9! With a whir of motors and a rumble of traction system, the animal rolled into the room. Yes, mistress. Listen carefully. I always do, mistress, he said, hurt. Yes, I know, Leela apologized. Goodness, were bad manners catching? I want you to tell this lady what you have in your primary programming circuits about the doctor. Primary programming, mistress? Primary programming, K9. This is the first information imprinted on my ROMs by the Doctor Master. Tell the lady, K9. The Doctor Master is intelligent, kind, trustworthy, studious, level-headed, loyal, heroic, handsome, even-tempered, courteous. Mistress, this is hurting my secondary circuits. The little animal was obviously in pain. Thank you, K9. Leela turned to the lady. Now, would a machine lie to you? No. The lady considered what she had heard. I find it difficult to believe that anyone could be that wonderful. You can only judge by yourself. I suppose that it's possible. Of course, the doctor would be very upset if you ever praised him for anything. No matter what he does or says, you must always treat it as routine. Don't ever imply that he's doing anything special. He sounds very modest. The fish was on the hook and playing nicely. Oh, yes, very modest. It's one of his sterling qualities. Mistress! K9, be quiet. Adopting silent mode, mistress. He rolled off into a corner to sulk. But you'll have to do something about your hair and clothes. Really? Yes, you always have to look different. The doctor can't stand to see you wearing the same thing twice. I've been told that I can't bring along many clothes. Oh, there's a large wardrobe on the TARDIS. You should be able to change clothes at least 3 times a day. I would have thought that one sensible outfit... The fish might be slipping the hook. Oh, the doctor doesn't like sensible outfits, Leela said emphatically. You'll have to dress like a lady. Very fluffy. I suppose I could manage that. And your hair. Leela managed a convincing shudder, although it should have been apparent that she was not accustomed to shuddering at all. You should wear it loose, not tied up like that. But this is most practical. Time for allies. K9, does the doctor care about practical hairdos? Mistress, the doctor does not care about... K9, does the doctor care? Yes or no? No, mistress. You see? Very well, then. What can you tell me about this Type 40 that he travels in? I'm sorry. You probably don't know much about a sophisticated machine like that, do you? The TARDIS? Leela wanted to be sure they were discussing the same thing. Is that what he calls it? Or is that the quaint name that you gave it? He calls it a lot of things. I always called it the TARDIS. Actually, it's badly in need of repair. I don't suppose that you know anything about repairing that particular model? Not really. It's a very old version. I didn't study antiques. I'm supposed to install a special homing device. Would he like to do it? I think that he would be very shocked if you expected him to poke holes in the TARDIS. Why don't you just go right ahead and do it? Surprise him with it. He really doesn't care much for the old traveling machine, so do feel free to make any repairs that you want to it. I shall do that. The lady stood and held out her hand. Thank you so very much. You've been surprisingly helpful. Anytime. Oh, one more thing. Yes? Your name. It's so very long. Should I shorten it? Oh, no. I mean, he'll like it long. Good practice for tongue twisters. Have you ever been called anything else? The lady stopped at the door, prepared to leave. Oh, yes. I had a nickname when I was in school. Really? What was it? Fred. Leela looked at the closed door and smiled with real amusement. Fred. Well, the doctor never liked things quiet anyway. She picked up the small transmitter again and sat back down. K9? Yes, mistress? Let's get ready to run those tertiary transduction shield programs again. If I'm to be responsible for the defense of Gallifrey, I want to be quite sure they're secure. Yes, mistress? After a moment, Leela stopped what she was doing. K9, I know that it may hurt a little, but would you please repeat the primary programming on the doctor again? The little dog almost sighed. The doctor, mister, is intelligent, kind, trustworthy, studious, level-headed, loyal, heroic, handsome, even-tempered, courteous. Mistress, must I continue? No. K9? Yes, mistress? You know, the doctor was many things, but he was never a Boy Scout.
The vervoids are probably the best dirty joke in Doctor Who.
They're hermaphroditic plants.
A lot of plants are.
So there you go. It's based on science.
No, they'll ship anything.
There are probably 11 and handle shippers out there. You just have to drill a hole where his mouth is, and you're all set.
You know he needs the room. I've seen it in pictures.
I'm not saying you're not a fan. I'm saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Doctor Who gives a drunken Doctor Who podcast for the end times.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson,
Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors podcast. Keep collecting.
Up there is the scanner, those are the doors, that is a chair with a panda on it. Sheer poetry, dear boy.
And now it's time for the main story on the Doctor Who Collectors podcast, or the main feature, whatever you want to call this. I kind of call it the main story all the time, but maybe this is more of a educational feature. Today we're going to talk about reproduction boxes, mostly from the 60s and 70s of Doctor Who items that came in specialty boxes, such as the Dennis Fisher action figures, or the Dalek sweet cigarettes, or the Rollikins, or things of that nature, or these rocket guns, or things that came in these amazingly colorful things, and of course, very difficult to find today. And there probably is a good reason to buy a reproduction box if you're looking to display your collection and you want the box just for the sake of the box. And I do have a reproduction or two in my collection. One I asked for, the other one I didn't. So I was going to talk about the total, what I found out. I found two companies in my search here. There may be more, but I found two that do reproduction boxes, and they both do them quite differently. But anyway, my first story, of course, I'm going to talk about an auction that I was looking for. I was really trying to find a Tom Baker action figure, Dennis Fisher, with the English box, because I have an Italian one, and that's actually very, very special to me because it's signed by Elizabeth Sladen and John Leeson and Louise Jameson and Sadie Miller. So it was really quite the collection there. But I wanted to find an English one, so I found a guy. He was selling it. That plus a Dennis Fisher TARDIS box with broken parts, I guess. And nowhere in the auction did it say that it was a reproduction box. But I got it, and the box was like, I'm like, something is off about this box. You know, it looks too new. The box was coming apart in the back, which meant it was attached. It was not printed underneath both sides. It was attached. And I said, this is a reproduction. So I contacted the seller, and he's like, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you it was a reproduction. I'm like, oh, I don't want to mess with sending this all the way back to where it came from. So I'm like, okay, nope, this was an education for me. So it's important to know that there's one company I'm going to recommend here and another company I'm not going to recommend for the basic reason that there's nowhere on the box that says it's a reproduction. I do have a real English box now. I found one. In fact, I found two. So when it rains, it pours. Anyway, I compared them side by side. I looked in all the flaps. I looked in the inside of the box. And I didn't see anywhere where it said this is a fake, or that would have been nice in felt tip, right? Or reproduction, not the original, you know. So I think it's a problem. I honestly do. And so before I get into the good and the bad here, I want to show you some comments. We left a comment here in the Doctor Who Collectors Club, and I said I was, looking for, does this, should you bother with these, or do they confuse collectors? So let me read some of the comments here. I will not read names, but this first person here is actually known to me. But there is a common thread here with all reproduction pieces, be it repro parts to repair a toy, such as Dalek appendages, a 3D printer, I think, a box, or nowadays complete sets. For example, the reproduction 60s Dalek soap sets. For some collectors, these can be a cheaper path to display a worthy piece in the collection. I completely agree. The main issue does become a deceptive sale of any of these reproductions as original. I'm fairly wary these days, given most things can be reproduced fairly well. This is true. With modern printing, modern color printing, it can get pretty close. However, there is the fact that some of these things from the early days, now my Dodge the Daleks game is in great shape, but there's a little weathering on it. It's 60 years old. My Dennis Fisher K9 box and my Leela box are all in really rough shape. My Cyberman box looks like it's been run over by a truck, but that's because it was a toy in the 70s. It was played with. If you kept the box, that was really rare. I mean, my parents were quick to throw out the boxes. Another writer here writes, "This is a fake," should be written in Tom Baker style. It is a fraud. Another writer writes here, "That's not happened to me, but I did buy a hardback, which I thought was a real one, until much later I realized it was a paperback converted to a hardback. I only realized after noticing it was slightly smaller than the other hardbacks. I hadn't even realized that that was a thing till I joined these pages. I agree, everybody should be transparent before the sale takes place. I do have two hardcovers on my shelf. One is an absolute fake. One is a copy of a book that is clearly fake. And somebody had turned the Blue Spine Survival into a hardcover. And I've got a completely fake Loch Ness Monster with a first printing cover and a third printing inside that was clearly reproduced. So, yeah, you got to be careful there. And that's those are the comments I have there. So it definitely it's just crazy. Another user here writes, "They 100% confuse collectors and the general public. My personal philosophy is to stay away from them. At one point at a Lego, I was part of a team that looked into thousands of cases of fans buying older sets sealed in boxes only to find pieces were not in bags or dirty. Turns out this was all due to a nice old lady selling her adult son's collection when he passed. The son's job allowed him access to a professional multi-stage printer, and he would make custom boxes for the sets he found thrifting. His intention seemed to be just for his personal taste, but soon turned into MBR for Lego. So I would never allow a repro box in my collection. Thank you. And that I appreciate that completely. And my last user writes, they should be 100% transparent in their listings. It should be stated on the box that it's a repro. So those are my listeners out there. Thank you so much for your comments. So I'm going to talk about two companies here. The first one I found was 20thCenturyBox.com. They make a lot of reproductions on their website right now, and the Doctor Who section has a collection of boxes that range in the $31 to $44 range. They include the Dennis Fisher Doctor Who Tom Baker, the giant robot, the Palatoy talking Dalek, the Dennis Fisher Dalek, the Dennis Fisher K9, Cyberman, and TARDIS, along with, for some reason, a mug. And then at the bottom of the page, the Leela reproduction box. But they have all kinds of TV series on here for, things like that. It's really, really crazy that there's boxes. They have Kenner boxes. It looks like for, if they're doing Star Wars, man, that's... like the $6 Million Man, the Venus space probe I remember having that when I was a kid. Darth Vader, oh my gosh, yeah. So these are all reproductions. Nowhere on the box does it say it's a reproduction. So I reached out to 20th Century Boxes. I did not get a reply, but I believe the box that I have here is a 20th Century box. Just looking at that in the pictures. I don't know if anybody else makes these, but, that's my conclusion there. So I would say stay away from 20th Century Box, but I am going to talk about also another company called RetroToyRevivals.com, and that's owned by a wonderful guy named Clive Collier. And, I know for a fact, because I do have, I did get from him a Sugar Smacks box, because I wanted to do an unveiling at my 60 items for 60 years that, this is what came out that year, but I have all the original badges. So I wanted to pull the badges out of the box. That was, it was for show, and I mentioned that this was a reproduction, because the chance of owning an original Sugar Smacks box is, I think 5 exist that I know of. So that is really something. But they have some wonderful reproductions here. The Doctor in the Daleks box by Mark's Toys, the Friction box, the Rollikins, the Bump and Go Dalek. Looks like they've got the backing card for the Plastoid mini badge and the standard badge. The John Pertwee Nestle chocolate bars. The simulated chocolate bars with, in fact, you can get a box with the chocolate bars, which is kind of cool. So they have that. But they also have the Leela and the Tom Baker boxes. They're actually pretty reasonably printed, and you can get some other cool stuff as well. Now I have a note here from Clive that I'm going to read here. Clive is the owner, and he says here, and this is Clive. My boxes are marked on the inside of the flap so they cannot be passed off as original. My boxes are some of the very best out there, and I've been told in my field of reproduction boxes that I'm pretty untouchable when it comes to quality and the overall look of my items. I have to agree. I separate myself from other box makers as I tend to use the correct card, the correct folds, and I have a dedicated graphic designer to make every piece of artwork as correct and just like the original. I print direct onto the card. I don't use home inkjet printers, as 98% of box makers do. That's something that I noticed about this Dennis Fisher box. It looked like it was done on a home printer. In my opinion, graphics are not sharp, color is faint, and the overall feel is awful, and I agree. Mine are printed on the correct card, and I use a 180,000-pound Oki digital printer. Oh, great. And of course, he wants to send the podcast link when it's done. Of course, we will, Clive. I'm going to do a video on this too, because I own an original Dalek Sweet Cigarette box. In fact, I double checked. I took it out of the case and I opened the flaps and there's no writing in there. So I got one from Clive and we're going to put them side by side. And I know he says it's a reproduction on the inside flap. So we'll put those together and we'll compare, apples to apples. But that's, it's important to kind of know, and I've also seen, just kind of another book out there, but there's lots of posts on social media about, hey, avoid this because it's fake. We talked about a fake book not long ago on our podcast, but there are also some fake Blue Spine paperback books. There's some fake Target books out there, and of course, that's that be said, there's always an opportunity for someone to counterfeit or make something that they are not entitled to. We're just, sometimes collectors get a little fooled, but I do believe it's completely dishonest for any eBay seller, a bookseller, or wherever you're selling your stuff to sell a box that is a reproduction and just not say anything, lie by omission, or put on there, yeah, we're, it's the real deal, but it's really easy to tell. And I'm really getting better at this as I get older, about looking at box and looking at something and say, oh, this doesn't seem right. Something seems off. And, I just remember when I was working in the banking industry, we got a rare opportunity in one of our training sessions. They said, we're going to bring in a real counterfeit bill. And I'm like, wow, I thought those went to the Secret Service. But they said, yeah, this one was pretty good, and they let us keep it for training. So they keep it locked up, of course. And I looked at this old style $50 bill, and I looked at it through the plastic, and I said, he asked, do you see what's wrong? And I said, yeah. I said, Grant's picture looks a little too clear. And he goes, yes. And he pulled up a picture on the screen of an actual 50, and Grant's picture is slightly, just ever so slightly out of focus. So I thought, oh, okay, well, obviously, you could see something that doesn't look right or feel right. The box material itself feels differently from one to the other, and it's newer materials versus older materials. There's also, going outside the Doctor Who world, I watched a program once about a guy who specializes in making fake Renaissance and medieval artwork. He says, finding pieces of old altar pieces was easy around Italy. He's going, something that's old, and he showed how to mix the pigments and how to, what kind of materials to use. And he was able to paint something that almost fooled an expert. The expert was like, wow, it does look old. However, he noticed a couple things in there that the artist, of course, tried to put some things in there to make it very, easy to tell that it wasn't really there. So it's kind of an interesting deal there. Anyway, I do recommend RetroToyRevivals.com. I'm going to put their link on the podcast website here. We do not get any money from them. There's no affiliate situation there, but definitely give them a look if you're looking for a box to to display your collection. But of course, if you go to sell it, make sure you fully post on there that it is not real. Or if you got to x-ray it, make sure it says this is a fake behind the Mona Lisa. And this has been our main story. So stay tuned for the most outrageous offer.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. Keep collecting.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club Podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Allison Seyfried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast on the Direction Point Podcast Network. Keep collecting.
All my travelings throughout the universe, I have battled against evil, against power-mad conspirators. I should have stayed here. The oldest civilization. Decadent, degenerate, and rotten to the core. Power Mech conspirators, Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen. They're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt.
And now it's time for the most outrageous offer. This is an offer that comes in a lot higher than it should be, or it's completely out of the range, completely or ridiculous in terms, or possibly sold by somebody who doesn't really have the book as it is. So today we have a threefer for you. This book here that we're talking about is Doctor Who Spiral Scratch by Gary Russell, published in 2005 by Random House. One of the books that came out during the BBC books after the new series. So we start, of course, with the highest offer. We have three offers here that are all in the same range. In fact, some by just a few cents off here. It looks like even just like, I'm guessing here that I'm just going to throw this on a limb here, that these three places, and I don't think they're all different, I think they're all the same, don't even have this book. And so they use stock images. These are sellers that were found on Abe's Books. It was brought to my attention by an anonymous email. So I checked it out, and here we go. So the top one here comes in from Gold Books in Austin, Texas. Now, Gold Books, just to kind of go into that a little bit, they don't really have, I guess they've got a seller rating of 5 stars. There's no issues with them whatsoever. That's just how that goes. And they're offering this book. It says new copy, paperback condition new. $3,130.58. Now, try to remember that number. $3,130.58. $4.25 shipping. Also important to remember. Okay, so my second copy of this same book from Front Cover Books in Denver. Little ways away from... Front Cover Books in Denver. They joined in 2021 with a seller rating of 5 stars. So, and that's, there we go. Anyway, they also have a 5-star rating. Condition new. $3,130.56 and $4.30 shipping. That's 2 cents cheaper than our friends in Austin, Texas. Same stock image. Okay, number 3. Wizard Books in Long Beach, California. Nowhere near Denver, nowhere near Austin, Texas. From Wizard Books. Now, our friends at Wizard Books joined in October 7 of 2021 to Abe Books. Have a seller rating of 5 stars. They have no real other books for sale for the most part. Anyway, same book. Spiral Scratch, Gary Russell. $3,131.56. That's actually the most expensive of the 3. But it's not far off from the other 3. $3.50 shipping. Okay. If you're all out there scratching your heads like I am, then we're all at least in the same boat here as far as how is this possible here. So, I used to contact the sellers, and then, of course, I would never hear back. Or then the next day, the books would be gone. So I have taken screenshots of each one of these, and I will have the links posted on the website, so you can hopefully check them out for yourself. And in going further here, this is crazy. No Doctor Who paperback post 1964 should be in the $3,000 range. In fact, I don't know any books back in the 64 range that are that expensive. So this is a bit crazy. I did manage to locate a more reasonable copy. Now, this book apparently is a little bit more difficult to find. I will concede to that. But you can get this book for $44.98. And breaking news here. Breaking news. 2 additional listings just came up here. So I'm going to go through these. Now, this actually caps the previous thing here, guys. So this is happening live. This was not here when I checked this about 10 minutes ago prior to recording. Doctor Who Spiral Scratch from Bird Books in Austin, Texas. Different bookstore. I think it's a different bookstore. Let me double check here. I just want to make sure I got this. No, that was Gold Books. So this is Bird Books in Austin, Texas. Offering the book for $1,883.81 and $2 shipping. Very good used condition. So a slightly worse condition book for $500 more. But that's not the topper here. This one just got added a moment ago here. Used by Wizard Books again in Long Beach, California. Same one. $2,615.92. That seems a bit crazy. Now, Wizard Books here also has a copy for $3,131. Wow, this is crazy here. So there's quite a few of these here that are way up the price. But anyway, the $3,000 one still wins. I apologize, I misspoke earlier. But this is crazy. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. The lowest price I found for this book is $44.98, which is pretty reasonable. I think that could go. Says it's in very good condition. He'll probably sell it. Now, here's my guess here, that they're hoping that you'll pay the higher price because I think they're going to buy it from this guy here in Kansas and sell it for $3,000 with a huge markup. That was if you don't know much about that, go back to my talk with David J. Howe a while back, and we talked about sellers that don't even have the book, and they're hoping you'll pay the higher price and that you'll just get the book then and then go off with it. So it's just crazy. I mean, I'm fighting this price gouging everywhere I go. I fight it on eBay. I fight it on Abe's Books. I fight it on thrift books. I fight it on independent bookstores. I had a very interesting argument with a woman in the UK who was trying to sell a really beat up copy of The Web of Fear in hardcover, second edition, for over $1,200. And I said, that's just not going to fly. Especially when I showed her sales that sold that book for, in some cases, $200 or less. And of course, then the book disappeared off our website. So I don't know what happened there, but I'm hoping that you guys shop around. And that's why we do this. One of the reasons I do the podcast is to educate as well as entertain. So hopefully it's definitely not entertaining to part with three large, as they say, on a paperback book from 2005. Just doesn't make any sense. So again, if you find an item out there that is a bit ridiculous, you can contact me a couple of different ways. You can email us at drwhocollectorspodcast@gmail.com and put outrageous offer in the subject line. Or you can contact us on social media, at Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, or at Twitter at Collectors Who. And we will investigate, and you may get on the air. If you do not wish your name to be added to this, just say anonymous, please, and I will honor that. Most people want to remain anonymous. So there you go. And so that wraps up the most outrageous offer, and that wraps up the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast for this edition. Thank you for listening. I really, really appreciate all of you out there who take the time to listen to these sometimes long podcasts. My special thanks goes to Brandon Peters, who voiced the Jean Airey story that we heard today. So if you'd like to read a Jean Airey story, I'm actually looking for people who are willing to read their stories. Just contact me at the same place. What's coming up on the podcast? Well, next episode, I believe I do have a conversation with Ken Deep, the showrunner of the Long Island Who, or LI Who convention in Long Island, New York. And also has he has edited a new book called The Companions of Who. We'll talk about that. What's on the future horizon here? Well, I've got interviews lined up with Lisa Bowerman, who played Bernice Summerfield. We're going to have Tasha Achilleos, Lauren Cornelius back on the program, and a very special interview coming probably later this year with Sean Pertwee, the son of the late Third Doctor. And he and I struck up a friendship and a conversation, and we will have him on the podcast as well, talking about Doctor Who collectibles from the Third Doctor. And until then, keep collecting.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.